afternoon. Walton County Sheriff Mike Adkinson, along with Deputy Extraordinaire Tony Bianco and PIO Extraordinaire Corey DeBridney, and this is the Sheriff Live. For those of you that don't know, the Sheriff Live is where I get to meet with my bosses, the stakeholders here in Walton County, Florida. So let's talk about where Walton County, Florida is. Walton County, Florida is halfway between Pensacola and Tallahassee in the Florida Panhandle. We run about 65 miles north and south and 45 miles east and west. To put it another way, we run from the Alabama line to the coast. So we try to do this twice a month where we speak to the citizens of Walton County and really anybody, anywhere, and kind of discuss what's going on here in Walton County. But we also will answer any questions you have generally about whatever issues involving policing, public safety, anything in that venue. Here's what I always say. I cannot guarantee you that I'll give you the right answer, and I cannot guarantee you that I'll give you the answer you want. I will, however, try and get you an answer, and if we find out it's wrong, we'll go back and try and correct that too. So with that, you can actually reach us on any of our social media platforms, whatever you're watching this on. Shoot us a question. We will try and answer it. I don't see the questions. Mr. Bridnia and I think Deputy Bianco go over it and kind of look at it and fire the questions at me. So give them a chance to catch up a little bit. Sometimes people get in conversations and it's kind of tough to keep up, but we'll try and answer all your questions to the best of our ability. So with that, Ms. Corey, what do we got this day?
Well, let's talk about some exciting things that have happened this week. I must apologize for my voice. This is just the result of being sick for the last month, so I sound a little raspy, so I apologize for that, so just bear with me. We had 8 people graduate the Law Enforcement Academy this week, and we swore in some people today. We did a promotion ceremony today and then gave out some awards.
Had a retirement schedule, but they're going to come back for that ceremony in a couple of weeks. Captain Robert Gray retired as well, but it was good to see.
We might have to send somebody to the house to pick him up to bring him back to the office.
I don't know if he's going to show back up. I don't know if he's going to show. He got that last check, and he's gone, man. That retirement check is good. But it was a great, to see people at all parts of their career, whether they're brand new deputy sheriffs, detention deputies, or firefighter EMTs, or medics. And, we got a chance to recognize some of our staff, our deputy, dispatcher, detention deputy, firefighters of the quarter, which was really nice. Had a dispatcher be recognized today as employee of the quarter, and Jessica does a great job for us. But it was really good to hear, to see everybody get recognized by other members of of the office, and that's generally who puts in these awards, or other staff members, which is great. And we had some promotions, so all that was really good stuff.
Yeah. Deborah Lee McCormick says hello. Beth Niblett, your employee at the Walton County Jail, she says hello. Hopes we're doing well.
Thank you.
So, and on another note, speaking of the Walton County Jail, a couple things we put out this morning about our new body scan machine.
Oh, yeah.
And that is pretty impressive for a couple of reasons, but not the least of which is it prevents dangerous drugs from getting in the jail, protecting both our staff and the current inmates.
Sure.
But just talk a little bit about how that technology is helping us.
So a couple things. Let me give you an example. That particular individual was being booked in for a misdemeanor, which is a lower level offense under Florida law, and had fentanyl. First of all, so that is an immediate life safety issue to people in the jail and the person trying to smuggle it inside. So that stuff is deadly. This piece of equipment allows us to help prevent that from happening. I mean, that's ultimately people's lives. Also a danger to the staff. I mean, we've had staff pass out. We've had staff sent to the hospital just for minor exposure to fentanyl. That stuff is incredibly dangerous. I'll just tell you from a technology standpoint, I think you'll find this interesting. We had just replaced a piece of equipment that we'd had probably only about 6 or 7 years, that we paid $250,000 for it, maybe closer to $300,000 for it. And that thing was obsolete, that we could not even give it to anyone. We attempted to give it to other agencies. That's how fast technology is changing. I know, Tony, you see that every day with everything from our body cameras to our radios. Things change so fast. But I just was amazed at a piece of equipment that was, $300,000. I couldn't even find anybody to take it to give to them, which is pretty incredible. But this new piece of equipment is great, and it is a life safety piece of equipment. So.
Yeah. The other cool thing, and you snuck it in there, that we're really excited about. I'm so excited about it. I'm beside myself.
Yeah. Oh, I love how you did that. So it is our new beekeeping operation at the Walton County Jail. So we just graduated our first official beekeeper extraordinaire, which is a really unique and kind of cool thing. And I will tell you, we did that through the Department of Agriculture, worked with us to get our folks
University
certified.
of Florida.
University of
Yeah.
Florida, their Extension Outreach Office. And we've got somebody in the beekeeping business.
Yeah, so I'm going to be featuring that. I'm going to go out there with them on Monday, put the whole bee suit on. Detention Deputy Russell Brown is going to help me kind of navigate that and like get some pictures of them and all of that.
I love everything about that.
Yeah.
I love everything about that. And in fact, I think they were so pleased they were trying to get this inmate's about to be released from county jail, and they were trying to get them a starter pack of bees for like a hive and a pack of bees. Everybody's trying to get them moving forward, which is a great thing. And it's kind of the parable of the talents. There's a lot of different things we try at the county jail. We've got a commercial driving school, which many people know. We've tried welding before. We certainly do our faith-based and educational programs and substance abuse programs. So we try a lot of different things. What's the best solution? Well, they're all good. They're all like the tomato sauce, right? They're all good. It's just whatever works is what works. So we're going to keep trying it. But I think the bees are a pretty neat thing, and it's certainly an interesting vocation to get someone into.
Sure. Very cool.
Erica, who's watching on YouTube, says the sheriff sounds great.
Great. Love to
Volume
hear
is
it.
finally going for a change.
No pun
so
intended.
Good.
Tammy Henderson says hello.
Well, hello,
Michael A. Russ. I've been seeing a lot of outstanding things coming out of this office. Keep up the great work. And Paul Horton is saying, is this a meet and greet?
It is always a meet and greet. Yeah, it's actually, it's, I'll back up and tell you, about a decade ago,
We started this almost like 9 years ago.
Yeah, almost 9 years ago. And the reason, Paul, that we started this is we did town hall meetings throughout the county at different times. And what we found is people work. They got other stuff going on.
Yeah.
And they didn't have time maybe to meet us in Paxton or meet us in Red Bay or Darlington or Miramar Beach or wherever it was. Mossy Head, it just didn't, it was tough to get people. But with this, you can, be home from work and maybe you're fixing dinner or you're relaxing, whatever that is, and you can ask your questions. Plus, you have a little bit of an anonymity. For some people that's important, and they get to ask whatever questions they want. So, this is it's a virtual town hall meeting. So,
yeah, cool. So, Paul, if you have any questions, just let us know. Erica Granz Z says, "Fantastic, helping the bee population is so beneficial." Yeah, it has a ton of.
Listen, I've so nerded out on it. I want to go do it myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the benefits of bees, not so much the bees themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
They can keep the bees. I just want the honey.
Yeah, amen.
And I could use some right now, as per my voice. Sonia Pierce Roth, is the LSV program implemented yet? And I think what she's talking about is Chief Rowell's work with the county. To try to get that implemented into possibly an ordinance of some kind.
Yeah, that is still under review. I think they're still trying to work out quite a bit of it. So they've been going back and forth. Our office working with the county, trying to get some things to be unified about low-speed vehicles. And listen, they're the bane of my existence, I think, sometimes. But it is important. It's important it's done correctly. And then the other thing is going to be about educating people and letting them know what the...
Yeah, and talk a little bit about that. You spoke to a group a couple days ago, and they were asking about golf carts.
Yes, and they really meant low-speed vehicles.
Yes.
Right. So, again, low-speed vehicles, and I'm going to separate this for those of you that do not know, is essentially a golf cart that is road-worthy, in somebody's opinion. It has a tag, it has brakes, it has seat belts, it has headlights, it has blinkers, and is insured. So you have to have that to have a low-speed vehicle, and it must have a tag. And it's accessible to be on roadways up to speeds of 35 miles an hour. You can also cross roads that it can't be on if the other road is going into something that it can be, right? So you can see them crossing 98, for instance, in some locations. A golf cart looks exactly the same, except it doesn't have a tag, a blinker, seat belt, and the rules are different. It can never be on the roadway, on the public roadway. It can be on the private roadway. And one of the things we were actually having this conversation before we got on air is a lot of people don't realize that some communities are golf cart communities, and they allow golf carts. And you'll see different signage. Let me give you an example. In Sandestin, their signage, I'm making this up, but it may say 12 miles an hour. It may say 16 miles an hour. It may say 26 miles an hour. as opposed to any other public roadway in the state of Florida, is going to have DOT approved signs, which are always going to be, 20, 15, 30, 35, 45. You'll never have that odd off number like 26, 13, 12. That's because those places are private roadways, not public roadways.
So it becomes a challenge, and this is kind of what, and we're not saying this because we're necessarily against finding a solution, but when people suggest a change like, why don't you just make the roads 36 miles an hour, it presents a challenge because it would have to be bumped up to 40.
Yeah, it can't
and
be 36.
do you want people driving 40 through
Seaside.
Rosemary?
Yeah, Rosemary, Seaside.
Right.
Exactly. So that is a great example that the speed is then too high there. So yeah, that's one of the issues there.
Yeah. And a few weeks ago, we posted, I guess it wasn't a few weeks ago, probably a week ago now, where we had 4 golf carts pulled over, or low-speed vehicles pulled over simultaneously on 331 and 98.
Yeah.
And it's just so dangerous for them to be on those roads.
But again, it's a little more complex than sometimes people want to make it, and it's kind of been my experience after doing this 30-something years. If someone says to you, all you have to do is, they probably don't understand the complexity of the problem, because it's never that simple.
Yeah,
never.
For sure. What we don't want is somebody to lose their life.
Absolutely.
And the challenge is that we have a transient population coming in who's only here for a week.
Sure.
And by the time they roll, they kind of
and to them, a golf cart looks like a low-speed vehicle.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the difference in a lot of people's minds? So
for sure. Okay. Kimberlina T says, my husband says you should market the honey by calling it behind bars. But in all seriousness, what will become of the honey?
We haven't got there yet. It'll be used internally to start with. We actually produce quite a bit of vegetables in the county jail. And the one thing we've tried to do is not flood the local markets, because that's not fair to people who are running farms and farmers' produce and things of that nature. We have given them we just gave several tons.
Food for thought.
Food for thought. We gave several tons of vegetables and food to those folks. And we're going to see how that works and maybe try and do that again. We also invested we're looking at a food dehydrator to expand the shelf life for years. So, we try to maximize in-house as much as we can, but we never want to be in competition with the local farmers and folks like that. So
and
we would give it away first.
Yeah, and they're consumed right inside the jail, the vegetables, and hopefully soon to be the honey. Sharon Vaughn. The efforts to help men and women leave the jail better than they came in are so beautiful, and it's changing lives. Thanks for being a great leader in the community and creating a caring culture in the county with your Leos. Paul Horton, following up on is this a town meet and greet? What are we doing to keep our deputies safe in this hot weather?
So I tell you, it's always so challenging here. We've looked at everything from cool cops to trying to buy the tropical weight uniforms, to trying to find things to wear under the vest, to find cool packs. I don't know that I've ever seen a great solution. I mean, Tony, you worked on the border for years. I don't know there is a great solution to this. I mean, what's the best thing you found?
Well, with the Kevlar vest, essentially being a half-inch sheet of plastic on your back and on your chest, there's really no place for the moisture to go. Yeah. What I have seen is things that can go inside your vehicle that hook onto the
the cool cops.
Vest. Cool cop.
Yeah, cool cop. Yeah.
And the hose, you can stick it down your collar and then cool off, which is pretty effective.
We bought some of those. We've tried those, and some people like them. We use external vests, so and with special shirts for people to wear when they take off. If it's appropriate. So we certainly try that, but I have not found what I thought was a great answer. It wasn't a great answer when I was on the road in uniform every day, and I still don't like what I see. The cool cops are probably the best thing I've seen in a long time, to be honest with you. And that is just as simple. If you're wondering what he's talking about, it is literally a vacuum cleaner hose that goes into the air conditioning duct and allows the deputy
in your
car to put it down inside their vest. But we have found with the external vest, some people like them to take them off when they're in the office, but you can't take it off while you're in your car, and so they have to wear that vest. Yeah. So it's a tough environment.
Yeah. Okay. K.A. Lynn, you guys are doing a great job. After the recent shark attacks, are there any new policies or any changes in place?
quite frankly, not really, because I think that those are so difficult to plan for. So for it to be consistent, I think it was a great example of where organizations working well together. I think, South Walton Fire District did a great job. I think our deputies did a good job. Hey, listen, the public, the fact that there were a couple of doctors and nurses there in one of those situations made a big difference as well too. I think the fact that those deputies that a couple of the deputies that were immediately on scene were EMTs. We're going to expand that EMT program. We're making that available to all our SRDs and all of our beach patrol deputies as a priority for those that want to do it. We're not going to make somebody do that if they don't have the heart for it or they don't have the skill aptitude for it. It's not really the right fit. But that's one of the things I would say probably is to, again, continue with those that want to expand in the EMT realm. We're going to do that. But that's just that is a tough situation. It's just kind of the short version of that. Yeah. But that air medical, again, proved its value. That
Walton Air Rescue.
Walton Air Rescue just absolutely continues to impress with the ability to provide life-saving services. So.
Yeah, and listen, I think, too, what people don't realize is that we had two in such a short amount of time. We had Okaloosa Med Flight take one, and then we had Walton Air Rescue take the other.
Absolutely.
And I don't know that would have been possible so quickly had we not had both in the area.
For sure.
So that was great. But another challenging part of that was where those incidents happened, which was Watersound. There was approximately a quarter mile of boardwalk between the beach and the ambulance where they had to physically carry a patient.
Interesting enough, one of the first deputies on scene on Buffalo happened to be a traffic unit, Chris Webster. And so, what I say with like Chris has got, I think Chris got 28 years on the job, right? Mm-hmm. And still down there hustling and running and hears it and is responding as quickly as it can. And that's a testament to somebody's
It's really
dedication.
cool to watch his body camera too, because while he's running down to these scenes, people are handing him bottles of water. They understand the sense of urgency and like what he's going to need. And I think the great part about Deputy Webster and what he did was he saw that people were helping and he didn't barge in. You know what I mean? He was like, how can I help you? Like,
he saw people that were providing appropriate aid or better care than he could render. And that's, that's in the name of the game, what this is about.
Yeah. Okay. The page Help Find Kimberly Raymer wants to know, can you tell us what you're doing to help solve the disappearance of Kimberly Raymer, and why isn't Holmes County in on the investigation since most leads lead back to their area? Just as the phone calls from her house, where the truck was dumped, where the person of interest was that night, everything leads back to Holmes County.
So I'm not going to comment on that particular part of it, or some other things that maybe I'm privy to that some other folks are not, right? The problem with that case has always been a multi-jurisdictional issue and the time frame. I've said this before and I will say it again, that I think in today's world, we would have liked to have had a crack at that early on. But there were a lot of compounding factors. Notwithstanding that, what we've tried to do over the last few years, and as I've said to Kimberly's mother, Ms. Sue, is that we will never close the case. We're going to continue work. We try to put a fresh set of eyes on it. It went to a district attorney review in Alabama, probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, maybe 2 years ago now, seeking to get an indictment against some individuals. They did not return an indictment. But again, notwithstanding that, we're going to continue to try and work that. In fact, that is being added to a cold case deck that is coming out statewide across the entire state, so that the details of that case are good. What I've always said, and I'll continue to say, is people know. The witnesses are there. The people know that this is a solvable case. And quite frankly, as much as anything, at this point, I would like to be able to recover her. I think her family deserves that, and I know that people know. I mean, listen, the answer is here. The answer is here. The answer is in Walton County. And, whether or not we're the case that has original jurisdiction, that may be in Alabama, but the answer is here. The answer is here. And there are people that are walking around right now, probably listening to this, that know the answer. Yeah. But we have spent years working with surrounding jurisdictions, the lead jurisdiction. So FBI was the lead and is technically the lead investigatory agency in that regard. Mm-hmm. So everything that we've done or that has been done by OP PD, OP Alabama, or Department of Law Enforcement has been secondary to the Federal Bureau of Investigations, but we have and will continue to try and find ways to make inroads in this case.
Yeah, and we partnered with the Deck podcast. They have a podcast on Kim Raymer's case. Kim was put on a regional deck of Emerald Coast Crime Stoppers playing cards that was put in our jail and jails in the area, and now she's the featured card from Walton County for a statewide deck of cards.
And I will tell you, two of the investigators that worked at Josh Martin here in our county, along with a retired Florida Department of Law Enforcement agent, Dennis Haley. Dennis was working for them in Alabama, working for the district attorney's office. So that's a lot of cross-state, cross-county experience working on that. Dennis is exceedingly competent. Josh is exceedingly competent. And so I feel like, we just can't let up on it. We can't let up on it.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Lieutenant Wendell, your crime prevention specialist, is saying, going back to the low-speed vehicles, talking about speed limits, etc., and that some roads have to have DOT signage. He said, unless the private community has signed a traffic MOU.
Right, but if they sign it, if a private community signs a traffic MOU, the signs will get changed from that standpoint too. So they have to meet certain compliance standards from there.
Great. A couple people just
like, by the way, Lieutenant Wendell, just like a typical Virginia state trooper, right? He is out there looking out that every step of the way. He knows I'm picking on him because I love him. Lieutenant Wendell does a great job for us and has for a number of years.
Retired statey from Virginia.
Yeah, we try not to hold that against him too much.
Yeah. Sergeant Josh Bennett says, for every one we stop, 3 drive past us with violations. He's not wrong. Talking about low-speed vehicles. And then Jerome says hello from Alpena, Michigan.
A little cooler there than it is here, I bet.
Yes. And then Sergeant Curtis says shorts is a way that you've helped with keeping deputies cool in uniforms. And then Michael A. Russ, what would I have to do to run the Walton County Department's physical assessment just for fun? I'm not interested in the department as I have other professional commitments. So he's asking, like, what could he do to run our PAT course for fun?
We haven't because it's an insurance liability issue for those type issues.
Your risk manager is probably listening.
Yeah, our risk manager probably just had a stroke when you said that. But, I'll be honest with you, we are going to run a firefighters challenge in November. We're going to run a firefighters challenge in November, and we'll start advertising and talking about that. And we have talked about in the past, in coordination with that firefighter challenge, is potentially, letting some people sign up to sign a waiver and to do that, and then raise money for a charitable cause, something, Children's Advocacy Center, Westernwood Ranch, or Aliquot, or if it's something like that, maybe Cancer Freeze. So I'd be curious to see what the level of, but my luck would be,
somebody would break an ankle.
Yeah, and then Sheriff didn't care about people's safety and broke their ankles. So.
Yeah.
But I kind of would like to do that. I think that would be a fun thing. I think it would be a great challenge to open that up and let people do. But.
Yeah. And I bet if you asked Deputy Chris Webster about the PAT course, he would say it benefited him that day that he had to respond to 2 shark attacks and run nearly 700 yards.
We're only one of a handful of agencies in the entire state that does this, makes it mandatory. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think there are only 4 agencies in the entire state that make it mandatory.
Every 6 months.
Every 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we actually have the lowest time that you have to do it in of any of those agencies.
Yeah.
Yep. 2 more minutes to do it in the other counties.
Steve Sunday said he's watching.
Steve trying to solve some crime. You know what I love is how much I pay Steve. So Steve Sunday was an investigator of us for many, many years, and is retired and come back working cases for us on the side. But I like to work Steve down on what I have to pay him. I'd like to get nothing down and nothing a month.
Steve loves what he does. He's very passionate about it.
He's very good at it, too, by the way.
Yes, and we appreciate you, Steve. Ms. Rushing says, are there any changes coming for the care of canines with this heat? I saw where another Florida county lost one of their canines due to heat incident while chasing down a suspect. And I will tell you, and I think I can speak on behalf of our canine teams and even the prison canine team, they are very, very aware of when their dogs need a break and getting them water and not
alarms
pushing them too hard.
Alarms on the vehicle should it shut down. So a lot of times you see their vehicles running because they keep the air conditioner, the fans running on those.
But when they are tracking a suspect, they are very cognizant of like what their dog's telltale signs are of when they get tired. They know their dogs really well. And in some cases, unfortunately, like what you saw in different counties, the dogs have a lot of drive and they want to catch the suspect. And sometimes you don't realize until it's too late that how hot they are. All right. Going through questions, Derek Gossett says, I love watching body camera footage. AR Hunt, there was a teen death from a possible fentanyl overdose in Walton County a few weeks ago. Why not send out a PSA to parents and kids?
So we try that quite a bit. We try to advertise that as much as we can, but also be a little bit sensitive to the families at the time. But yeah, I always think we can probably do better and do more in regard to that. And we're I got to be careful what I say about that case. We've got a lot of stuff going on with that case.
Yeah. So. Char Allen Johnson, on March 17th, why did it take your EMS personnel acting as a deputy? I'm sorry, I'm trying to track what she's trying to ask me. I think what she's asking for is better training. She was trying to do CPR on her husband. But let me come after that, come back to you on that. If you want to write us an email at pio@waltonso.org, that way we can address your concerns about EMS, and that way it keeps your situation private and off of social media. Mark Holmes wants to know, is Walton Air Rescue private or owned by the county? Is the helicopter owned by?
No, it's a P3, which is a public-private partnership. We're one of only a handful in the nation. I think there's 3 or 4 other agencies that do it the way we do it. So what happens is we were able to negotiate with Air Methods for them to provide a brand new state-of-the-art airship, and we work staffing the ship. And so between us, they own it. They operate as a private entity. However, we negotiated a deal for Walton County. And let me pause. One of the concerns was several years ago is that what were considered exorbitant bills for air transport. But we were able to work out Air Method. They were extremely amenable and worked out something that fit within the insurance costing structure, so that we didn't get these $20,000 bills to individuals. So with that, I was agreeable to have them come here and work this out. And I will tell you, if you want to know how needed it is, we looked for them to be cost effective and efficient. They needed to be at least 30 flights a month, and they're averaging in the mid 40s now.
Yeah, that's how much we're having to fly. Far exceeding that number.
Far exceeding that. Yeah. In fact, this is the busiest airship in the Panhandle.
Cool. Haley Stofflet. Man, I'm really struggling with these names tonight, guys, so I apologize ahead of time. Haley said, I just want to thank you for all you do. I've been in and out of your jail and the surrounding counties as well because of my drug addiction. Ever since leaving your jail the last time, I've been on a Path of Grace program. I've been clean and sober over a year now, and I feel great. I wanted to invite you all to our event we're having at the end of the month. We'd love to have you come to see for yourself how really great the program is and how really well it works, and it's changing lives of so many women. Hope to see you there. Haley, really proud of you.
First of all, congratulations to you. I'm actually meeting with Eddie Mansfield tomorrow. So Eddie, I think is the director at Path of Grace, and we're talking about how to do things, how to help support them, how to expand. I think at home last night until about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, I was talking to different fathers that were having problems with drug and mental health issues with their adult children, right? There are not enough of these beds. There are so many people that need help, and so places like Path of Grace are so incredibly beneficial. It's something I think I would love to see funded more. I'd love to find some way to expand it, some way to encourage that. But congratulations to you in every step. Remember, no matter how far you're off the path, right? it only takes one step to be back on the right path. And so just that 1 foot, that day by day, the tenets of AA are still just as relevant today as they were, 80, 90 years ago. So congratulations to you. Just keep your head down to it and you're turning it around. Good for you.
And Dan Bertram at the Walton County Jail and Miss Brock told me that one of the women who we graduated from our programs is coming back to speak to the inmates.
After 2 years, she's had a really good 2 years, and we're going to try and help and encourage her and let her come back and say, hey, look, there's a pathway forward with this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, really good stuff.
Yeah, it's fabulous. Well, thank you for taking the time to reach out to us. That's great.
And congratulations. Yeah. Scott Kennedy says hello. Rich Foster, thanks to you and your staff for all you do to keep Walton County safe. Where can I get one of your re-election for sheriff yard signs?
Yeah, I try not to touch, and I'm very grateful and thank you so much, but I try not to touch anything of that. We're on the web, so if you'll search us up from a campaign standpoint. But I try really hard when it comes to this thing to make sure that I keep those separated. But thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Help Find Kim Raymer's page said thank you for answering the question. Just one more question. In a recent interview, you said that y'all have a workable timeline. Not to sound like I'm attacking you because I appreciate the investigation, but if the timeline is workable, why haven't we gotten an indictment yet? What? If the timeline's workable, why hasn't there been an indictment?
You have one of the problems. I always say this is not what I know; it's what I can prove, right? And I want to be careful how I say this. There's a matter of jurisdiction in this case. I believe and I've looked at this numerous times, pretty extensively over the years, and I feel confident in saying that I think the same timeline produced earlier would have resulted in an indictment. I think what has happened is as memories get farther away, as times gets harder to nail it down, but I can just tell you from a purely factual basis, I just need to be careful because I'm talking about other people. I feel confident that there is a timeline that I think could lead or should lead to an indictment or arrest. But you have to convince a grand jury of that. You have to convince a grand jury of that. Yeah. And it becomes difficult when you're dealing with diminished memories. And in this case where you had so many, one of the things that's almost equally important is eliminating all the false leads. Yeah. And the incredible amount of time that investigators from different agencies have put into eliminating everybody that wants to be part. This is one of the problems with social media, and it's a problem with the media in general. Everybody wants to be part of the story or thinks they know something, and they think it's so obvious. And we have to go through, and every time they say something like that they come up with, the Tony says, I know this and I know X, Y, or Z. It is incumbent upon us to go and run that down. And when we get to the end of it, it's no way related. It's somebody who wanted to be engaged or feel like they were important or part of the story. That is so much time and effort has been wasted there. It's frustrating. But back to the original statement, I feel the timeline is extremely solid, and I feel like it has some strong indications. So that's ultimately Alabama, and I should say this again, that's ultimately going to be Alabama's ability. They did take that timeline to a grand jury. They were unable to get the grand jury to make that indictment. I don't think it was from lack of trying. It's difficult.
Yeah. Mike Lesage is asking, can a 2-year-old go around the neighborhood on an LSV when in a child's car seat?
So it has to be a specific car seat, yes. On a low-speed vehicle, secured properly in a car, yes. There's a lot of different things going on. I had to think about that for just a second.
Chaz for Walton County is asking, is it hard to Baker Act people? Do you take away their guns?
So it can be extremely difficult to Baker Act people because there's really two elements, and the form is called a BA 52, Baker Act 52 form. A BA 52 Baker Act form. And two elements have to be present to have a Baker Act. One, you have to be an imminent threat to yourself or others. And that can be a pretty high threshold, right?
To prove.
To prove. Or so incapacitated as to not know who or where you are. It also has to happen while the deputy sheriff is there and or have a order signed for an ex parte order signed from a judge. So there are a lot of people that I know people call about and they go, well, listen, can we do something? You know, Corey has these issues and I know that she needs to be Baker Act. But when we go to talk to Corey, she does not meet that criteria. And it can be exceedingly frustrating to families because they go, listen, we're trying to deal with this problem. Corey's constantly threatening to do whatever to harm herself or to harm others. But when we talk to her, she does not exhibit that. Unfortunately, then we're bound by the law not to take her in. What we try to advise family members at that point is to go to the court and then have a civil commitment, this Baker Act, a civil commitment to be taken and held for evaluation. And under Florida law, they're held up to 48 hours for an evaluation. I can tell you there are people that we have Baker Acted in this county 40 times a year. Let me say that for you again. 40 times a year we're Baker Acting people. And of course, then the families are very upset. Well, listen, you've done this 40 times. Why don't you do something? And I wish I could tell you that I had the cure to that because I don't. There are times that we take people to a receiving facility and they are released before the deputy sheriff gets out of the parking lot. And it is unbelievably frustrating. So I don't mean to be too discouraging about that, but simply say this. They have to, under the law, they have to exhibit those two criteria. One or two criteria there. Second part, do we take their firearm? For the time that which we are dealing with them for a Baker Act, yes. They can immediately retrieve their firearms at the Walton County Sheriff's Office. By the way, that makes some people mad on both sides. Some people say, well, you should not take their firearms away from them if they're being Baker Acted. Remember, it's only a temporary removal for their safety, right? Which is, i.e., I am about to shoot somebody. I'm about to shoot myself. It's incumbent upon us to secure that. But the same logic applies, which is when they're released, that firearm has to be turned back over to them. Now, a lot of times what we do is give them to a family member. Just ask a family member to secure them. So we're not going through searching houses for weapons. But it can be extremely problematic. And I'll tell you, interesting enough, what we get the most complaints about is giving the guns back, or the family member giving the guns back, and then everybody else says, "Listen, you've just Baker Acted this person. They've threatened to shoot up, whatever." They don't understand how we turn those firearms away. And the only way for the firearm to be held any significant length of time is what is called a
risk protection order.
A risk protection order, which is a totally different set of criteria. So,
yeah.
Hope I answered that for you. We do these from memory. I go from low speed vehicles to Baker Acts to traffic things. Sometimes I'll get them confused. So.
Sergeant Curtis says Steve is one of the best investigators that he's ever worked with. Michael A. Russ says, thank you for answering my question. Unfortunately, I will be overseas again once November's here. Derek Gossett said she wrote it public. I'm not sure what he's referencing. Shar Allen she said, I already did, and y'all just said nothing was done wrong, and he took 33 seconds to start CPR on my husband from the time he made me stop. And she said that her husband might be alive today if he hadn't done that. Ed Plumley, thank you for all you do to keep us safe, and that he's supporting you and your reelection. John G. is asking, back to your new beekeeping program, how is this being funded, grant or through your operating budget? If it's funded by the taxpayer, will the citizens get free honey?
No, because there's a little bit of, well, let me back up to say, when I say no, the short answer to that is depends, because we may do something with, again, like the ARC, the senior centers, places like that. So yeah, in the past we give those folks vegetables, food. So that would be where it would go first if we do that. Again, we're not going to sell it because we're not getting competition with local vendors. But back to the first question, no, it's funded out of Inmate Commissary is how that's funded. Although I think there's probably a pretty good grant potential from a standpoint of beekeeping, because not a lot of people are doing it. But.
Yeah. And so just for everybody's edification, yeah. So inmate welfare funds are funded through Inmate Commissary, and they have to be used for inmate welfare.
Well, listen, there are places that take a different view on Inmate Commissary. I don't. I I think those funds should be used directly to benefit providing programs and offsetting costs, so we don't use them for other things here. You can. There's actually quite a wide variety of usage you can do that. I don't personally like it. So yeah, we use it to put back into those programs to help fund them.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's wrong that people do it another way. We just don't do it that way.
Rich Foster. Rich Foster wants to know, did your assistant, Allie, he wrote it Rytle, but her name is Lytle, complete the necessary paperwork and classification to receive tax-free charitable contributions to or for the Walton County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, we have a 501c. She was actually somebody that our CPA or our chief financial officer took care of that in coordination with an attorney to establish a 501c3. Yeah, we actually just got that taken care of.
Okay.
We've had one before. I didn't like the way it was structured. We redid it. Now we have that back out.
Okay.
I had a topo refill here.
Oh, got it.
Thank you.
Sorry, Denise Guilandry. Finally, we're talking about something that is super important: addiction, alcoholism.
Absolutely.
Ollie Walker. Hello, Sheriff Adkinson, hello. Officer Dobrydnia, and the rest of our fine WCSO. Tony, she's talking about you. We appreciate all of you so much. We know last week was challenging with the occasional but persistent, unsupervised, and unruly teenagers. I know that the department can't do anything more unless these teens are breaking the law, but is there something you could recommend that our commissioners or our tourism department could do to get the message out that 30A is a family-friendly environment? Any out-of-the-box ideas I think would help.
So, I mean, I think there's a couple things to consider. You know, one is one of the things that Seaside did a little bit different this time, and Rosemary's done in the past, set a time restriction for unaccompanied minors. That helped a bunch. That helped us. You know, obviously putting 40 deputies down there helps as well too, right? However, that, you know, long-term sustainability for these kind of programs, we need to decide. Let me give you an example of something I think that we can do. We were just talking about this before we got on air, which is under Florida law, the pedestrian can control the flow of traffic at certain places. So when they step out, traffic has to stop. Anytime that a pedestrian controls traffic, I think it's problematic, right? Particularly at 30.
It's dangerous, yeah.
It's particularly at 38. Then you compound that with some parking issues there. So those two things do not mix well, in my opinion. So I would, you know, I guess if I could raise my, you know, out-of-box magic wand, a couple things I would say right off the bat is looking at ways to control the pedestrian flow of traffic. And again, I don't know exactly what that answer is. And two, I think the parking is the other issue, because parking checks visibility. You've just got a lot of things going on there. Lighting, parking, and pedestrian crossings are three things I think we could do a lot with. You know, a lot of people ask me about getting bicycles off the roadway and making them on the bike path. Unfortunately, Florida law does not allow that. The bicyclists are entitled to be on the roadway, even when nobody's in the bike lane. So, you know, we get a lot of calls about that, about deputies not putting somebody in the bike lane, but there's actually no mandate for them to do it. The other thing the board just did, which I think is a good step, and I think, you know, the county administrator, Stan Sunny, and I discussed this recently, which is they've put some, essentially what I'm going to call pullover lanes for low-speed vehicles. And those low-speed vehicles will help keep from backing up traffic. And you say, well, how does that?
They've already put some of them on.
Yeah, they have. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it does have some effect, because a lot of these low-speed vehicles are driven by 16, 17, 18-year-olds as well, too, right?
When they shouldn't be.
But they legally can, right? So we could argue whether or not they shouldn't, but they can legally. This is you know, I guess my thought.
They have to have a valid driver's license.
They have to have a valid driver's license. But every time I stop one of those kids that I think is 13, they're like 18 or 19. So, you know, I'm sure I've got this underage
Is that
kid.
the older you get?
Yeah,
or
that's the older I get for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things. I think what Seaside step helped a lot. I think, you know, creating spaces for kids to go helps a lot. I think the advertising and marketing of it helps a lot. I don't know, Tony, do anything you think I'm missing from that standpoint? I mean, so there's not the solution. There's a lot of different solutions.
Of course, and the thing that we're I guess working against us right now is the social media aspect where they're able to communicate with a huge group and move together as a unit.
Yeah, it's helped us that we monitor that, so that's actually been a pretty good move. But yeah, they're fast with it. They're fast for sure.
Right. And another thing I thought was very effective this year was the use of our drone.
Yeah, I thought the drones were very well.
They saw it go up. They knew that they could be seen from above.
Sure. And we had some good use of those flock cameras as well too. Again, I've always not necessarily a fan of them. I think I've said that before, but the drones have done really well for us. So.
Yeah. Ollie, I hope we covered some of that. I think that I would say that in this particular case with Seaside, I think they took it upon themselves to push like, hey, you come on vacation with your family, spend time with your family.
Yeah, right.
And I think that was important. And we were there to help assist them.
And listen, it was incredibly busy. I mean, it was still really busy.
Yep. Denise says, how can we help as opposed to judge and shun? Path of Grace and Haven House try to support these organizations. Agree 100%.
Yeah. Listen, I would say this for them, and I'm not putting words in their mouth with Haven House or Path of Grace. I know funding is an issue. Funding is just simply an issue. If you look how expensive housing is here, one of our biggest challenges right now as we hire is the cost of housing here, right? And it is so crazy expensive. Well, now imagine trying to do housing for people that are have certain employment challenges or are trying to get to that point or maybe not ready to be employed yet. So, I guess I am fundraising for them. I would say that funding is a major issue to help those folks to be successful because they need more beds. Yeah. They need more beds. They need people that are actually going to be able to work there. I would say funding.
Yeah.
I actually thought with the opioid settlement money that's a good use for that money as well too. That some of that will be turned over to the sheriff's office. My position is that's some version of that is a good use of that money. So, but it's going to take a lot more than that.
Yeah. John G. said, we keep hearing the suspect in the Kim Raymer case is a relative of a Walton County Sheriff's officer.
Not true.
Elizabeth Parker, I appreciated the extra presence in Seagrove last week during 4th of July after the initial event that led to Seaside's curfew. Did your team feel the week went well and was a success?
Yeah, I think so. I think the went well. Yeah, I think the week went well. The truth is, when these things they go well until they don't, right? Because if you have 30 good days and then one bad night is the season of failure, and that's always kind of the way we have to look at that. But I think it went really well. I think they did a good job of managing that. A lot of people involved, and the credit goes to some of the businesses and citizens and the people that were down there, trying to assist and picking up the phone and calling us. So yeah, I was really pleased with that. So, and it's still busy down there. I think we said this before. I've told the county commission this maybe a year or so ago. The ADP, or average daily population today, is running around 270,000 plus people. Tie is 290 on some given days, like 4th of July weekend. That is a lot of people in 200 square miles. And that's majority. Legitimately, there would be 250,000 people in the 200 square miles that is South Walton.
Yeah. We had a question on, I try to advertise this Sheriff Live Q&A just so that people can prepare and maybe set a time to sit down and watch it. One of the questions that we were asked was, how are you going to make roads safer in Walton County? How can we make roads safer on Highway 98 specifically in one case? And a lot of people are coming here, they're commuting here, and when the infrastructure is not what it is, they have to go elsewhere to get goods and services and things like that. But talk a little bit about that and what we're doing.
Well, it's kind of the catch-22, right? Because one of the problem is particularly in a very fiscally conservative area like Walton County, right? And people love that, but they also have to remember if you have to spend money at basic social services or governmental service, which in this case is infrastructure. So I said there's 270-something thousand, let's call it 250,000 here in South Walton right now. And I'm saying South Walton specifically for a reason. I'm going to talk about North Walton in just a second. There are only two roads they're on. They are literally either on 98 or 38. And if they're going to go, if they're going north and south, there is one road and one road only, which is US 331. Mm-hmm. that is incredible. That is not a recipe for success.
Yeah.
That in and of itself. And listen, this was not, Gordon Graham, who's a pretty famous risk manager, he says, if it's predictable, it's preventable. This is predictable, ergo it is preventable. So they always say, when's the best time to plant a tree? Well, it was 20 years ago. When's the next best time? Today. I fully acquiesce, it's going to make some people mad, right? But I'm going to say it anyway. You must have a north and south artery for public safety between 30A and US 98. I realize people don't want that, but I am telling you, you cannot move emergency vehicles, you cannot flow traffic out. You must get this road. We were very close to getting it approved a few years ago. That should be a priority, I think, for the county commission. If I was a county commissioner, and I'm certainly a sheriff, I say this a lot, it's a priority. The other thing is you need an east and west road. There needs to be some east, and I know there's some discussion about the east and west road, at least west of 331, but you've got to have an east and west road, and that north and south off 30A is such a critical thing. So, and I understand people, listen, I love the state forest. I agree with all of that. I'm not saying you should put businesses there. I'm not saying you should build houses there, nothing like that. But I'm telling you, you've got to get that traffic off there. People forget that Camp Creek Road is a private road. People will call us and complain about the traffic's backed up at Camp Creek Road. That is a private road, could be closed by the property owners tomorrow if they chose to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the only, really one of the only ones other than, 283 and 393 and some of those.
Yeah. I think John G's replying to a body camera statement he says, yes, like when it shows DUIs that were driving on the wrong side of Highway 98 go free and move their car for them. He's referencing a call, I guess, from the other night.
Right. That's just a political statement. Listen, here at the end of the day, I support the decision the sergeant made and the deputies on scene and the commander that oversaw it. I was not aware that Mr. G was there to perform any field sobriety exercises or held that professional certification. In a domestic violence case, which this was, people make panicked decisions. And I just don't think you should use other people's suffering to try and enhance your own agenda, certainly not by attacking deputies. Save that for somewhere else, man.
Yeah. Kathy Manders, is there any programs like Path of Grace for males in the area? Walton or Bay counties, we saw a young man the other day in Bay County that approached us to say he was addicted and needed help. We weren't sure where to send him, but he did say an officer had approached him and offered help. He was in an arcade where we were with our young grandchildren.
Such
that's
a
tough.
Yeah,
that's really tough.
Haven House is certainly here, but again, there's such limited bed space. There are several places. Let me just say this: if they know who this is, you can certainly reach out to us, and we will do our best to find somebody. We were dealing with a Jeep, and I think it was Jeep Sullivan. Don't quote me on this. Out of Bonifay, that was trying to get a new addiction services home there. We're certainly talking with some folks from Big Bend Cares, trying to do some things to see if we can help bring that. I wish that was more in my purview, because I think it's so incredibly important. The mental health beds as well as the addiction beds.
Yeah.
There's not a family, listen, let's be pragmatic for a second. There's not a family in this country that is not affected by addiction or mental health issues. There's just not. I haven't met anybody. I don't know a family, and I don't know how we can't get this together and do this. This is where we've been penny wise and pound foolish with this.
Yeah. John H.B. Harrison, how can I get a how can I get a personal meeting with the sheriff? I have a good program I'd like to discuss with him. My name is John Harrison. Would you please ask Allie to schedule me? Thanks for our deputies for doing a great job.
Just email her. She handles that schedule. She can get us fixed up.
Okay. Denise is asking, for the Baker Act, after you secure them, a condition of that act should be put into a rehab program that might just help. The statistics are low, but it's worth a try.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's again, I wish the law allowed, mandatory treatment and some of these things. It just simply does not for a Baker Act.
Dottie Nest. Hi, Dottie. She's one of our reporters for a local newspaper here, Davuniak Breeze Herald. She said, I put this on Twitter before, but I'm not sure if it went through. Are there any updates on the golf cart or LSV driven by some teenagers that overturned in Blue Mountain Beach on June 23rd? Are the kids okay? From my understanding, we worked that crash. Yeah. One of our deputies did the crash, and there was minor injuries. They did transport one, but they were non-life threatening. Correct. So it's my understanding that the kids are okay. Obviously, a scary situation. So a lot of people are just responding to a different thread. Dan Curry, do you have a number of how many deputies you need currently or are understaffed? How understaffed are you at this point at the SO and for the fire rescue side? What are we doing at this point to help in staffing?
So that's kind of a multi-pronged question, but here's the short version of it. Even if you gave me $50 million tomorrow, you would not solve the staffing crisis tomorrow. And you say, well, why, Sheriff? Because you have to train people. And so for us, there's about a 2-year term. So if we hire somebody, from the time we hire somebody, if we put them through an academy and we get them out of FPO training, we're at about 2 years. So everything is lagged. What's happened is since COVID, quite frankly, and since the incident surrounding George Floyd, nationwide there's been a dearth of applications. Not just us, it's literally everywhere. We were lucky enough to get a grant for 12 new positions that is funded starting this last year to try and start getting quality applicants. But my position is always we're going to hire character and teach skills. I'm not going to hire somebody who's been in trouble at another agency or who's got some kind of background issue, or they have maybe some character issues that don't make them a good fit. And the other thing is there's a lot of people that want to do this job, but they're not. This is not the right place for them. Back to your central question. I would say what we needed to do now is to manage. Our attrition is actually a little bit below the national average. However, it's still problematic. I think if we're able to ascertain and add the 12 as needed so that we can staff investigations and K9 and are able to add I would say 6, give or take 6 more in the operations side, I would feel more comfortable. The problem is I don't know about that for 2 years. I don't know they're gonna, for us to make money, for lack of a better way of putting it, for it to be a return on investment, we don't know that for 2 years. We simply don't know whether or not they're going to perform as a deputy sheriff for about 2 years. So we're a couple $100,000 in it, not counting capital at that point. Fire rescue, we can train about 12 at a time. I had a good discussion with some of those folks, and we had an opportunity, just to kind of give you an example, we had an opportunity at a grant this year for fire rescue that would have staffed, could have added 25, 30. We can't train 25 or 30, so you can only do what you can appropriately train. You're in the 6th to 10th fastest growing county in the nation. So from my standpoint, what we need to do is stay on a consistent hiring schema over the next 5 years and not let up on it. As long as we don't let up on it, we will eventually pull out of that. But you can't do that tomorrow. Anybody tells you can simply doesn't understand the problem. But I think if we can manage to get these positions that we already have slotted in operations today, I think we're going to be in pretty good shape next year, as long as we don't stop. Then we can add 3 the following year, 6 the following year. But a lot of things sometimes statutorily change that we don't always see. For instance, SRDs. We had a new mandate on what SRDs were. When we started, we had 1 SRD. Now we're mandated to have 32. Guess what? We got new schools open. We got some going to pass, and there's statutory mandates so that all of a sudden that same position I had now must be reallotted to SRD. Or court security was a constitutional, it's mandated that we do this. You add a new judge, guess what? You're getting a new bailiffs. So these things are sometimes change our plans. We thought we had a pretty good plan a year or so ago, and then we had the school got over 1,000 people. Gets over 1,000 people, you got to have 2 deputies plus relief, because the way that works, if you take a school that has 909, make sure I say this right, 999 students, gets 1 deputy sheriff, right? If there are 1,001 students, there have to be 2 deputy sheriffs. Let's just say it's South Walton High School. If one of those 2 deputy sheriffs decides to drive across the street to get a piece of paperwork, I must call another deputy to stand there until that deputy returns back to the scene. That's a mandate by Florida law, right? And so in that, you also have to factor relief. I just say all this to say this. It's a slow process, but to do it correctly, it takes time, money, and thoughtfulness. But if you think that's expensive, try hiring the wrong people. Try hiring the wrong people. That'll get expensive, and it'll get life-altering.
Yeah.
So hopefully we answer that.
I mean, and just
about 12. That's a long way of saying about 12 per discipline per year right now is what needs to get filled.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like we just graduated 8 the other night. Yeah. And what people don't realize is when they graduate from the academy, they still have to go through essentially our academy,
our training,
which is an in-house FTO program.
Then the FTO program, and then a year probation. It's a pretty lengthy process.
And you're not guaranteed that all 8 are going to be able to complete that.
Yeah, just being blunt with everybody here, we let go of a lot of people in that process. I don't make any apologies about that. This may not be the right place for you. We're very sensitive about hiring the right type of people to be firefighters, EMTs, deputy sheriffs, detention deputies. We're just not going to take a warm body and get you in trouble.
Thanks, Dan, for the question. I hope we answered that for you. Derek Gossett said, "Seaside and creating space is the best line I've heard all night." Ollie Walker, aren't bicycles required to have a light, not just reflectors, on the front and back of the bicycle? Could we start warning or writing tickets for those violators? Wouldn't that help to keep teens a little closer to their rental or home area? I'm honestly not sure if bikes are required to have a light.
It falls into that having a memorandum of understanding for law enforcement to operate inside of that community. Right now, the rental companies that provide the bikes are not required to put a light on the front and rear of it. They have reflectors.
Right.
That's it. That's about all I could speak to.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit outside of our purview at this current point, but might be something the county would want to consider.
Yeah. So. Elizabeth Hanks, in reference to the need to Baker Act a mentally deranged individual, unfortunately, the bottom line is someone has to get injured or killed before anything can or will be done to remove them.
Well, no, that's not true. I mean, we Baker Act a whole bunch of people. It's just it has to be very specific criteria.
Yeah.
Very specific criteria.
I think John G's referencing the Kim Raymer question about the suspect being related to a Walton County Sheriff's officer. He said prior officer, retired or deceased. Denise says, hallelujah.
Yeah, I want to be a little careful about speculating. I probably shouldn't even answer the first part of that. But I understand what he's talking about, but I don't want to speculate too much on that for multiple reasons.
Denise says, hallelujah, let's use some of the money here to support these awesome nonprofit programs. Corey A. Godwin says, inmate welfare funds are not part of taxpayer or operation funds.
Correct.
Think honey buns, coffee, and inmate phone and video visitation magically transforms into meaningful and impactful inmate programs.
Absolutely. Like our heavy equipment operator course, which is fabulous. You're teaching men and women to use a tractor, a bulldozer, a backhoe, and we're getting people hired right out of the county jail with that, which I think is incredible.
Yeah.
Ambition and jobs change lives.
Yes. Stephen Chansey says the population growth will slow down speeders due to the increase in traffic.
A little truth to that too.
Yeah.
I literally was out working, and we were just laughing about before we got here. I literally was out working a rear end collision at 331 and 20, which thankfully a couple of I had a deputy there that could come by and relieve me of that. But it's a constant thing. I mean, listen, I got rear ended on 98. I literally stop somebody, I think, every day. I think every day I'm having to stop somebody. So we are all facing that.
Angela Strasner Sears says, well, there are plenty of folks on scene at Gulf and Miramar.
Truth.
Cyan Edenfield, I think it should be a priority for your officers not to judge people based on their last name, because I get profiled all the time just because of my name. Because
Dude, I have, that's the craziest thing. You won't believe this. But there are actually people that don't like me. Because of my last name. You wouldn't believe that. So I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Shannon Lynn Caps is asking, who was the commander? If it was domestic violence, was there any arrest of the aggressor? I think she's talking about the DUI, the alleged DUI traffic stop.
Yeah, that's being handled and investigated on scene. If you got any problem, I'm the person responsible. Take it up with me. And so my answer is it stops there. I support the action the deputy took. If you don't like it, you know how to handle that.
Tamara Wolf, 30A Cats is a nonprofit in South Walton helping to reduce and manage the community cat population. We've spayed and neutered over 2,000 cats and adopted over 300 kittens.
Wow.
We've repeatedly asked for a meeting with sheriff and have been pushed to the animal services. While they are very effective, we need a meeting with the sheriff. How can we make this happen?
Email Deputy Lytle and just see about getting on the agenda. Be happy to.
Jenna McEllier, Bridgeway in Fort Walton Beach has a 24-hour outpatient detox center, and she gave them their phone number. She gave us their phone number. Michael A. Russ says, ladies and gentlemen, this Q&A time for Walton County, not political debate hour. If you have an issue that needs redress, write a letter to the sheriff, submit a formal complaint, or fill out the feedback form on the smartphone application. Man, thanks, Michael.
Don't be dropping any logic up in here.
Like I like that
trying to hear all those facts.
I like that he brought up the smartphone because he said that's what I did. Wrote a letter to the sheriff. I did not need or expect a response. I gave my opinion and left it there, regardless of my issue. I still believe them to be doing a great job. We appreciate you. Thanks for dropping a smartphone app plug. Appreciate you. Angela Sears in Miramar Beach would love to see bicycle deputies patrolling.
Got
Tony,
one sitting.
You have one sitting right here.
We may just drop him off on the way home out here.
Many close calls with e-bikes and e-scooters on the bike and pedestrian path, which they are not allowed to be on if they're under power, correct?
Here it comes.
Depends on if they still have to pedal the bicycle, they can be in the bike lane. If it is purely motorized, they are not allowed on the bike lane. So
just to be clear,
bike path.
Most of those, because as soon as you said that, we're going to have a problem. If that bike can be pedaled, it can be on the bike lane. That is the short version of that.
But what about the bike path?
They can be in the bike path if they're pedaling, correct? Unless it's strictly a powered only or the brake power exceeds, I forget what unless it's a moped, the short version is unless it's a moped, yes, they can. It's problematic. It's problematic because those things can fly.
Yeah. And she said majority of cyclists do not use lights in the dark nor vocalize when approaching from behind.
Yeah, I think the lights would be a good idea for sure. I mean, I think we could all agree about that.
Yeah. She's asking if there's any way to get signs reminding folks of just being courteous.
Etiquette.
I can't get them. I can't get them to slow down with speed limit signs. So I'm not sure that's going to help, but I'm not opposed to it. I'm with you.
Yeah. Okay. Shannon Lynn Caps, how many officers have applied that are already certified, and how many have been hired out of those applicants?
So that's a good question. I would be misleading you if I told you exactly how many were because I don't know the answer to that. Just on average, I think we've had, like, for example, we just put through 8? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just graduated 8. We have, I think there are 4 pre-certs that have just started now. And so those folks, sometimes they come from out of state, and that's only like a 2-week transition. Sometimes they come internally, and we don't have to do that. But I think there's like 4 or 5. We always look to try and hire those people first if we can. However, let me put a caveat to that, because sometimes people have disciplinary problems in other places, and so what they're doing is bouncing around agencies. And so we try to do everything we can to avoid that. We don't want to take somebody else's problems because that's ultimately not what we're about. But by and large, we take pre-search where we can. So. Yeah, and that's incentivized. So we pay them a little more if they, if they come to us and they have a certain level of experience, and we try and do that where we can.
Yeah, and I don't think they'd mind me name dropping them, but we've gotten a few from Memphis, from other. I mean,
they're our best recruiters, quite frankly.
You've got a couple on SWAT right now that we got from other agencies from out of state.
Absolutely.
And they've turned into great deputy sheriffs.
We got Tony from from another agency as well too. So that's actually a really good thing. My experience with that has been, you know, when people come and they've been from the agency, they get a chance to really mentor younger deputies, and yeah, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. Kathy Mander says, thank you for all you do, Walton County Sheriffs, to keep everyone safe. You all do a great job. Randy is asking, where do we purchase our AR-15s from? Where do we purchase them from?
I have no idea. I apologize. I don't know.
Yeah.
We bought from a variety. We bought from, I was telling myself I'd be wrong. I think we bought Rock River, if that sounds right. We've bought Adams Arms. We bought HK. Did they buy the HKs? They were looking at
for SWAT.
Maybe HK. Yeah, they buy from a variety of them, depending just whenever they need to replace. I think we went from a military. We had some military surplus in 2009. Then we bought probably, I don't know, we bought quite a few from Adams Arms in 2010. But those are kind of aging out. You know, what happens if they ride in the back of a patrol car, they get damaged, and then they're replaced. So I don't really know what the make of them. Do I know?
I have an Adams Arms that was issued to me in 2020, and it's a beautiful gun.
Yeah.
It's a piston gun.
Right. It was that was the issue. It was supposed to stay longer and whatnot. But anytime you put these things in the back car and they bounce around there.
If I don't cut this off, I'll get you guys talking about guns for the next 30 minutes. So, Randy, hope that answers your question. If not, I'm sure I will be getting a text within seconds of somebody telling me where we purchased them from. So,
the only time I know that again, I'm not involved in that. I think the only time I was really involved in that was back in 2009ish. We bought I don't know, quite a few from Adams Arms.
Okay.
But for some reason, Rock River sounds familiar to me.
Okay.
All right. Sorry.
Okay.
What you got?
Next thing, John G is asking, why rely on those with no experience that you have to train? Do experienced officers not apply? Do you try to recruit any experienced officers or just rely on your own training for them? Seems like you're limiting your hiring pool tremendously. We do.
No. We try. No, just want to be clear. We absolutely try to hire pre-search first. 100% we try to hire pre-search first. We advertise heavily for pre-search. We reach out of state for pre-search and throughout the state. So yeah, our first inclination is always to hire those people that can be of immediate benefit, immediate help. But secondarily to that, you have to grow your own talent as well too. So it's kind of like most agencies, you kind of have to do both. But yeah, I guess I should put it another way. If 15 brand new people applied today, and we wanted all 15 of them, it would be extremely difficult, right, if they were brand new, because it's academies, and we won't even see them for a year. 15 pre-search walk in tomorrow, we're going to find a way to make that work because we're able to get them out moving a lot faster. So we always go to pre-search first, but at the same time, you have to continue hiring the process for, sometimes people that aren't certified. The same thing is true with fire rescue, by the way. It's the exact same principle with fire rescue. But listen, I just say this, there is a cost to hiring the wrong people. Mm-hmm. There's a cost to hiring the wrong people. You know, we do our best to try and avoid that. You hire character, you teach skills. But here's a clue. If they've worked from like 2 or 3 agencies, always at the same rank, and they're always moving around, the chances are you got a problem. And actually, one of the biggest indicators, if you've worked for 3 agencies at the same rank, at the same kind of level, locals, chances are you are going to be a problem. That's an IACP thing, talking about what shows statistically over a period of time.
Denise says, in your position, it seems like you're doing a good job. Thank you. It's a tough job. As long as you're not in the pockets of most of our commissioners, you have my vote. Laura Lee Sparks, and I almost brought this up, Laura, so I appreciate you jumping on here. She said there is a program called a Marchman Act, which can get court-ordered rehab. It's different than a Baker Act.
Yeah, they're two. You need to differentiate. Marchman has to do with substance abuse, right? Mm-hmm. And then a Baker Act has to do with, obviously, the mental health issues. Here's the problem. They commingle so much.
Yeah.
For those of you guys that have been around long enough, have been I've been 30 years now. It used to be called the Myers Act years before it was the Marchman Act. And but that is actually Marchman is actually easier for a commitment, at least temporarily, for a detox because it's the predicate's easier to prove. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
That co-issue of mental health issue and alcohol issue makes it so tough to get beds for folks.
Yeah. But thank you, Laura, for bringing that up.
It's a great point.
Randy's asking, do you buy level 2 vests, leaving some of them who don't feel safe to purchase their own level 3 armor?
That's somebody who doesn't understand what they're talking about.
Well, she goes on to say, is one as good as the other? I've been hearing a lot of talk about this, but I don't know the difference myself.
No, I'm not blaming her for it. That somebody's putting that out that don't understand. They think they're making a point. They don't understand. The same ballistics are involved in the 2 as the 3. The difference has to do with 2 things. One is the stiffness of trauma plates on some 3s. However, most deputies, what we have found is they want the ability to move. So one thing, turtle shell, as opposed to a little bit more flexibility. So you're trying to balance between flexibility. But in fact, somebody asked me about that today, and we called the Armory folks just to kind of double check what we were saying. Like, look, they stopped the same rounds. By the way, none of them stop rifle rounds. None of them stop a rifle round. So, people, again, that's somebody trying to, not her, I'm not saying her, but that's somebody trying to make a point they don't get. Most people do not want to wear the level 3 because of the stiffness of it. Mm-hmm. And so when we tested those things, they said, listen, do you want this one where it's going to restrict your movement, it's hotter, or do you want this one that stops the same thing? I could poll 100 deputies, and 20 would want one way, and 20 would want another, and 20 would want another. So as an agency, you say, hey, how do you protect your people? Does this make sense? And what's the best way to do it? But anybody to suggest that we don't protect again, I'm not saying she said it, but anybody says it, that's political dribble.
Angela Strasner says bike rental businesses should be required to equip bikes with lights because so many ride at night. It's so dark on scenic Gulf Drive. Sometimes you can't see bikes until they're almost on you. This happens to me almost every night when I can walk.
Yeah. So, and again, I think that's a BCC is going to have to make that kind of decision on those types of ordinances.
Lori Fain, park rangers are required to go through the academy, correct? Do you utilize them? It's my understanding they have training to enforce the law. Park rangers.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't 100% know. It depends. There are national park police, which are different, and they do have, and we've actually hired park police folks before, but not every park ranger. So it's a little bit different. Not like on the state, there are some park police where they used to be called DP police. I don't even think they exist anymore. I think they've done away with their uniform patrol. So I don't actually think in Florida they have a sworn park ranger position. I know there is Department of Natural. Tony, help me out. You're the Fed.
Right. So if it depends on if it's a national park or a state park.
Yeah. So, right. So state parks do not, to my knowledge, anymore. So, yeah, that would be great. But listen, that's the kind of person we would go back to what you said, John G., right? It's what they said before. If somebody comes to me and gets that little bit more training, if I can get them in there, we certainly want those folks, even if they're not sworn, because we can move them through a little bit faster.
Okay. Laura Lee Sparks is asking, haven't we been understaffed since at least 2018? Why haven't we caught up?
You've been understaffed since 1996, so let's be clear about that. The reason we hadn't caught up, we kind of run through a couple of different things, and I kind of talk about it. When you have massive expansion, so I'll break them up in a couple of different modalities for just a second. If you talk fire rescue, I'll use them for example. I think there was 98 firefighters when we took over. There's 140 something now.
That's been 6 years.
Give or take 6 years. But you can only hire somebody at one time. Remember Marjorie Stoneman Douglas? And the rules changed. So all of a sudden you had 12 extra deputies that had to come off the street to go in those schools. Bam. That changed. You had COVID and George Floyd. So you had some kind of things going on there together. When you say understaffed, these are actually positions we've requested and now we haven't been able to get them filled yet. So we're in the process of doing that now. I feel like once these 12 that are in there, I feel like it's going to have a pretty significant impact, across the board. But there's some things that are just mandated.
If I may, consider, and you just said 1996. Yeah. We've been through a recession since that time. We've been through a pandemic. Our economy's ebbed and flowed. What I will say is when people talk about being understaffed, what they don't realize is this county used to have 4 deputies for the entire county.
But again, from a purely relevant standpoint, what's happening now, what's happening is we're adding position and adding. So we, the sheriff's office, say we are understaffed here, which we are, and we need to get that corrected. So we're in the process.
But our staff has grown.
Yeah, our staff has grown significantly, and will continue. It's going to have to, because over the next 10 years. So I would, I think the projections I've seen put us over 120,000 in the next 10 years. The wild card for me is the number of tourism, right? So we're at 5 million tours when we went from 2 million. I don't think anybody can rightfully expect that you're going to go up, let's call it 250,000 to 250,000 tourists a year, that you are always going to run behind like that. Until we get some kind of static, we're always going to run behind. And the biggest reason, and Ms. Sparks, I would say this, is that we cannot train that many people that fast. Just cannot sign off and train them that fast. Nobody in the United States of America can do that. However, if we can stay consistent, consistency is the key here. If we can stay consistently, we cannot get behind. So for instance, let me put it to you this way. Let's say we hire this 12. And so the population continues to grow the next 2 years, right? Which we know it will. I need to add 6 and add 6, right? But does that mean I'm short 6 because I added 6? Well, sort of, because I'm saying I need that to be behind, but you're always going to run like that. You're always going to run like that.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that's hit us is the impact of adding capital cost from fire stations, trying to get our fire folks where I think they need to be and where they've told me they need to be. But I had a great discussion with a lot of the firefighters about this. And I said, look, if I can get you 25 firefighters tomorrow, do you want them? And to a person, they said no. What they want was, because they can't train them that fast. Now, let me back up. If magically walk through the door 25 firefighters and they're all certified and they're all that, we're gonna hire them tomorrow. But it's the training that's the issue, and you just do not want to make the mistake of rushing people through. That is a serious mistake.
Yeah.
Big problems if you do that.
Yeah. Okay, Denise says, love that. Ambition and jobs do save lives.
Absolutely.
Uriah Matthews says, ambition and jobs change lives.
Amen.
I'm putting that in the talking points. Keep up the great work. Thank you,
it's
Uriah.
Good stuff. We love it.
Laura Lee Sparks says, yes, state law requires a bike at night. The law that states that between sunset and sunrise, every bicycle in use should be equipped with a front headlight, rear light, and rear reflector.
Okay.
That is true. On county maintained roads.
On county maintained
public roads.
Public roads, yeah, right.
Not inside of a resort.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's still a good, to that point, I think she's right. I think it would be a good county ordinance to add on top of it. So
yeah. And then, sorry, I'm trying to catch up on everybody's questions. Sergeant Curtis says, Bushmaster, Adams Arms, and SIG.
So the question about the rifles, I think Andy asked that. Yes. SIG rifles, Bushmaster.
Bushmaster, Adams Arms.
Where did I get Rock River? I must have been imagining that.
That's another brand.
Oh, is it? Okay, well, so Bushmaster.
And
SIG,
to Tony's point, SWAT may have a different set of guns than it's issued to. Samuel Helms says, did an internship for my college degree with you last summer. You have great deputies and staff. I hope to see more in the future at Walton. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you for joining us.
Dan Curry is asking, do you have a designated recruiter? If so, do they visit academies outside of our immediate area?
Yeah, yes, we actually do. Tyler Nobles, did Tyler move to another position? Right.
But he is still helping. He's still helping.
That I'll tell you, our best recruiter have been other deputies. I would say that Mr. Curry, to that point, we try to send somebody out to all these academies, but I'll tell you the vast majority of we get referrals is from other deputies, which I think is great. But we're really trying to branch out even up into Alabama. We go to everywhere from Pensacola to Tallahassee to try and hit these classes, and we're all in there fighting. But what I have seen is that most of the academies now, people are sponsored. So when they get to the academy, they already have a job. So when you have 4 or 5 that don't have a job, you start asking, why do they not have a job?
Yeah.
So we have to kind of go a little bit farther in the background. But, but a designated recruiter plus one would be great.
And we did an internal survey. I want to say it was last year, maybe the year before that, where we asked people, like, how did you come to work here?
Yeah, exactly.
And 90% of them, it was by word of mouth.
Yeah, absolutely.
They
Reputation
spoke to somebody who worked here that spoke highly of the agency or whatever. We had very few say that it came from billboards, radio ads.
But we tried that. So we've tried billboards, we've tried radio ads. Doesn't mean we'll stop doing that, but it's interesting that where we tend to get them is,
word of mouth.
Yeah, and so we were joking about our guys from Memphis and up there. One of the guys in training, Steve Rogers and some of those guys. Chris, and those folks that came from Memphis and came from Upper Mississippi and Arkansas. Man, they're some of our best recruiters. Those guys are pulling people in. So that's good stuff.
Yeah, we have one that's in our new hire orientation that I met the other day. Who, the Key brothers. Good friends of Steve and Matt Key. Yeah. So, I think word of mouth is the most effective.
For sure.
Sergeant Curtis says that we all have level 3 vests.
But some there were 2s that were rated at 3. So somebody's just playing with the facts on
that. Sergeant Bennett said FWC handles law enforcement issues within the state parks.
Right.
Trish Day Leclerc, I appreciate your comments about Path of Grace because they're proposing building a congregate care facility on South Church Street. Did you know about this?
I did not.
Will it be a detox? Apparently you feel it's critical, so I trust your expertise.
Oh, it's absolutely critical. I was not familiar with it.
Randy wants to know, was there any an ongoing investigation with a recently retired captain? Sorry, I'm getting more raspy as the night goes on. Was there any investigation going on with a recently retired captain?
No. We could make one up. He's pretty good for something. I could probably make something up for him.
Not being able to golf for the amount of hours that he golfs.
He needs some golf. But
but
you just wonder this stuff,
He was not under investigation when he retired.
Listen, he worked for me for 15 years.
Well, he outlasted 3 sheriffs. Did he work for 3 or 2?
3. He worked for
3 sheriffs.
I probably should have investigated him. That would have been a good one.
Randy, thanks for the explanation on the armor. Michael A. Russ, the sheriff has a lot more to worry about than just plates for his deputies. There's quite a bit of command and control logistics and operations that fall under his purview.
And they're actually quite a bit more capable of doing it than I am. Just quite right. I think that's one thing that people forget is that I hire capable, competent people, and then I trust them to do their job. So if you ask me something, what's the thickness of this plate? I have zero idea. And somebody goes, gotcha, he doesn't know the thickness of the plate. No, dum-dum, I don't. We got a lot of stuff going on, so.
Michelle Cutchins, I love that your focus is on training and the character of a person.
Thank you.
Todd Rourke, as a military veteran and professional leader, there is absolutely nothing more important than the safety of the troops.
Agreed.
If he has this much to do, hire experienced leaders and delegate, stay out of the mud.
That's exactly what I was just saying. Thank you, Todd. That's exactly the point.
Deborah McCormick said you have the best deputies. Michelle Cutchins, this might be a dumb question. There's no dumb questions, Michelle.
I've heard some dumb questions. So this one's not, but I've actually heard some dumb questions. I used to say that too, but go ahead.
Defuniak has their own police department. Will Freeport or any other city in Walton get their own police department?
So Freeport has their own. It's us. So we provide municipal services for Freeport and Paxton. We have for, I think, probably, 50 years, 40 or 50 years. So Florida law provides that the sheriff provide services to all the citizens as necessary. So we're great. We're blessed that Defuniak Springs has a good police department. We work very closely with them, but we actually provide for everybody else. South Walton particularly, we run it like a municipality. So that's actually the reason the substation is kind of structured the way it is here, but it functions as a municipal type setup here. Hopefully that answers your question.
Lori Fain, do we have an invitation to officers who patrol cities that want to defund them? I think what she's asking.
Yeah, no, we've absolutely said, hey, come here, we'll treat you right. The governor gave a $5,000 recruitment bonus to anybody that wanted to come. We matched it. We had $5,000 on top of that and tried to reach out and get folks. But I think a lot of people, although, truthfully, we've got quite, again, I go back to Memphis and those guys. We've got quite a few guys from that area, really good guys.
Yeah.
But I will say, I'm going to say it again, we got a lot of people apply that we can't take. And, on paper, they look great, they look wonderful, until you scratch below that surface a little bit. And there's some background issues that we're not comfortable with. Because at the end of the day, I'm responsible for the conduct of my deputy sheriffs, and so trust me, I've spent enough time in federal court to know it's not a pleasant place to be. So you want to try and hire the best people you can. And then to what it was Mr. Rourke, what he said a minute ago, which is, again, you hire people and you delegate to them. If the sheriff is walking around trying to figure out what the tires should be on the car, we got a bad problem. Or what type of the newest cutting edge training for handcuffing is, you got a problem. Because you hire people that do that, right? So those are the kind of things I don't feel pretty good. I feel real good with our training cadre right now. I just think are world beaters, and we're getting such great feedback from those folks. But interesting, one of those is a retired lieutenant from where is
Keith.
Yeah, where is he from?
Polk County.
Yeah, down in Polk. He was a police department there, so he was a retired lieutenant there. Where did Sarah come from? Sarah came from Kansas, right? She was an officer in Kansas. Steve Rogers came from right out northern Mississippi in that area. Even Captain Falk was outside of Atlanta before he came here. Correll worked at another city agency, but and I think that's interesting that those men and women came here from other places. They excelled, and now we've got this really kind of interesting
mix of people
and philosophies.
Yeah.
Sitting around a table with that many different Southern dialects is really hard for me.
Tony has a problem with that, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't say you could
Tell
understand
me about
that.
it.
Yeah.
I'm the only Yankee
Can't
in the room
understand
most
each
of
other
the time.
sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Shannon Truitt, thanks for bringing this up, Shannon. My brain is mush at this point in the week. She asks if we can mention the back to school splash bash. So for your edification, the back to school splash bash is July 27th. That is where we do our first come, first serve backpack giveaway, our water slides, our foam cannon, all of that. The summer splash event that was supposed to be held this Saturday got canceled because we are under a heat advisory.
Correct.
And they were not saying that it would be wise to have anything outside. Right. So we did cancel that one, but that one wasn't the one where we were doing our backpack giveaway. That was just like a separate event that the school resource deputies wanted to do to kind of, get interaction with kids and stuff in the community.
How many backpacks we're going to look at trying to do this year?
700.
We're going to try to do 700. So let me also pair that. There's a lot of there's a lot of churches also involved in our church over at Destiny.
Liberty Volunteer is doing an event.
Liberty Volunteer Fire Department's doing one. Destiny Worship Center's doing one. Rock and Roll Church doing one too. There's several different divisions. There's several different places that are all getting together and doing these Tony, you fixing to give me something brilliant?
Oh, Destiny Worship Center is doing theirs on the 20th, which is the week before us.
And I think Liberty is doing theirs on the 13th. I think it might be this weekend that Liberty Volunteers doing their
somebody with Liberty.
giveaway.
We'll get that out and advertise theirs as well too, and try to. The other day, we want as many kids to be able to get these backpacks as we can, whatever we can do to kind of help them. School starts back the 7th.
On the 7th for my school.
So in that time, that way, it's that quick.
Are we already there?
We're getting close. We're getting close.
Wow. Okay.
Actually, they start the first days on the 8th.
Okay. So
the 8th of August.
But Destiny's doing one in Defuniak Springs this year.
Yeah, Destiny's going to do that.
And down here at the Destin campus and other locations as well.
Freeport. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
a lot of there's going to be a lot of backpacks, which is a great thing. So you got a couple of bites of the apple from us, and Liberty Volunteer Fire is going to do some. Destiny, and there's 2 other churches are involved, and I'm blanking out, but I'm going to regret that later.
Laura Lee Sparks says 30A is a county road, is it not?
It is a county road.
It is a county road. I think she's referencing the bicycles. Or she might be, I'm not sure if she's referencing the speed limit or not.
Yeah, the problem is on the bike path itself is not a county roadway, right? So to have the light on the bike path, I think it's going to take a county ordinance. Yeah. I need to double check. I could be entirely wrong about that, but I think on the bike path, it's not a county roadway. So we just need to make sure that that's appropriate. In the roadway is a little bit different, but then you get inside a seaside, which is a resort and those kind of things. But the short version is they all need lights. I mean, the really short version, they all need lights.
Lori Fain said, I absolutely agree with the vetting. Guess I'm thinking more like New York City, etc., where we would take better care of them.
Yeah, we really have tried and tried. I think it's a big move. You know, if you're moving from New York and you're coming out here, we have found housing to be probably the biggest issue when people come here and they're looking for housing. You know, we went for a while with a fire marshal that we had tried to hire a fire marshal, and they just said, look, after all, we cannot afford to live here. Yeah. You know, and so for us, you know, our starting salary is for a deputy is around $55,000 right now. And that's actually the highest in the Panhandle. Okaloosa and Walton are kind of at the same pay range. However, that's not going to get it done. Our goal, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, our goal is to push it to $60,000, hopefully over the next 2.5 years. And every time I say it, I got to make sure I'm clarify this for everybody else. And I was telling the fire guys this the other day as well. When you move the starting salary, you have to move everybody else's salary up too. We don't want compression across the board. But you have to understand for every 3% is about $5 million in a budget. So it's expensive, but 3% really isn't enough to impact people right now. So to get them where they need to be, which I think is around the 60,000 start, it's going to take a couple of years. But 55 was a good move on that, and we'll continue to try and do it.
Yeah. Captain Hogeboom, she was my next mention. She is asking if you wouldn't mind mentioning that the adoptions for cats and dogs at the shelter.
Yes, please come and adopt cats and dogs because I cannot take any more at my home. One more hippo and I'm going to have an ark.
And Captain Hogeboom, they are doing a special at the shelter right now following the 4th of July. For the whole month of July, you can rent a cat or dog for $17.76. Yeah, $17.76. So, and they're fixed, they're chipped. They do a lot. They do a lot to try to get the animals out the door to people. So, Dan Curry said, "Thank you for answering my questions. Be safe."
That's a good question.
Randy said, "Liberty's event is this Saturday from 10 to 3 at the fire station on Highway 90." So, there's multiple opportunities for people if they need to get backpacks for their kids. Deborah Lee McCormick. Sorry, some people are talking back and forth. Heather Cleveland, I may have totally heard wrong, but Walton County School District schools are starting on August 12th for students. Yes.
So you're gonna have to file that under things I don't know since
he's an empty nester.
No, they're all up in my nest. And I would like my credit card back too.
Heather Cleveland said, "We're going to miss Officer Pineapple. Consider this my formal request to transfer him to ECMS."
Again,
she's got a student graduating.
To the point we talk about hiring character and teaching skills, we don't just put anybody around your children. Yeah. We're careful about the people we hire and then we place in school. That's not a retirement job. This is people that want to be engaged and want to be around children, can be good role models, but also can perform the duties that are necessary. So, But go back, and I'll even go back to the question Mr. Curry asked earlier, which was about being short. We have 2 other schools that are private schools, that are requesting to add deputies. So am I short? Not technically, but they want those positions. So I'm trying to get to the point that I can do those as well.
Where you can accommodate them.
Trying to accommodate that because I think it's important. Yeah. But anyway.
And thank you. Sergeant Fannin just wrote me. And said, and speaking to exactly your point right now, so during the summer, school resource deputies can help in other areas of the agency, but they have to report sooner than the first day of school.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it takes them off the road again, before even school starts, so they can prep and do campus visits and all of that.
Yeah, but I tell you what I like about Walton County School Districts, which I'm going to put a plug in for the teachers and the staff there and Superintendent Hughes, and what a great job they do. The Walton County School District was found to be the number 3 school district in the state of Florida again, which is phenomenal. And I think that's a testament to Mr. Hughes' leadership, the school board, and the principals. I think we take that stuff for granted. And we work very hard to maintain that partnership with the school district and to have a close working relationship. I talk to Mr. Hughes regularly. We talk about what issues do we need, and that's unique. It's not like that everywhere. Yeah. I'm kind of proud of that.
Yeah. Lori Fain said $60,000 isn't much when you're risking it all. Thank you to your mighty men.
We're not at 60 yet, so we're gonna try and get them to 60.
I think she was talking about you trying to get there.
Trying to get there.
Mike Smith, what is your single biggest accomplishment in your mind since you've been elected? Wow, that is, Mike, that's a great question. I'm interested to know what your answer is.
You know, there's the one that nobody.
So when did you get elected first?
2008.
Okay.
So 2009. There is what the public would see, and then what I would see, right? So I'm going to give you two different things. For me, it's about the culture and expectation. The culture and expectation. What is the standard of excellence here, and the standard of what is and is not acceptable behavior, and what, you know, this idea that we continually improve and get better, and that we always striving to be. We see our own flaws. I think that's I feel, you know, if I go home tomorrow, I feel that is the number one thing. Now, and I think long term, that's what every sheriff should want. That's anybody in any organization. You want to leave things better than you found it. But for me, that's the number one thing that people would see and notice. Secondarily to that, I think the biggest thing for me is going to be to make sure these radio communications are where they should be long term, and that it doesn't have to be replaced in 5-10 years. That it's done correctly this time, so that we're in a long-term solution to a problem that we shouldn't be facing.
Yeah, and talk about that radio project a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean,
you've talked about it before.
Yeah, it's a major undertaking, major project. It's one of those things. I think it's a real good lesson in management and leadership and forecasting the future, and then making decisions and the ramification of impacts of when you pay me now, pay me later. So I think we've said this before, but I'll just real briefly explain this for those of you that haven't heard this before. When the county started down this system of replacing radio system or upgrading radio system in 2007-ish, something like that, they went through, and there were a couple of different proposals done at the time. But essentially the proposal said at a minimum of 12 radio towers. You had to buy the system of our radios. They went with what's called the state law enforcement radio system. But they always said, we need these towers. The problem is we built 3 towers, and we ended up not owning those towers. And so those towers were ultimately sold, unbeknownst to us, and there was some lease space on there and some of those things. The state built a couple of slurs towers, but we started realizing there was a problem, and there was some issues with the maintenance not getting done. The problem is you can't just squeeze a stone and get $50 million. So the estimate is that you need 22 towers now, 22 towers. And the radio system, I think, you have to realize the maintenance on these things are staggering. But I think you could talk to South Walton Fire District, you could talk to the volunteers, you can talk to anybody and tell you, listen, this thing has to be corrected. But you can't snap your fingers. It's got to be done thoughtfully and correctly. We're deep into that process now. We chose to do something called an invitation to negotiate as opposed to what's called a request for proposal. I know I'm getting too technical for this, but let me just say this.
No, I
it's
think
a lot
important.
more work to do an invitation to negotiate. It is a ton more work to do an invitation to negotiate. You get a better product. And so what is going to happen is we've funded that. That's one of the things, we carry capital in our performance budget every year, which some agencies don't. We do. So we have probably $20 million of capital money in our budget, which is buildings and radios. But this radio system is going to be built, and it's going to be built correctly, and it's going to last for 20 plus years. And those towers are going to last into a new technology, which is probably going to be cell service. So that is probably the biggest thing that none of you will ever know anything about or care anything about, but it means a lot to me because it's about protecting these men and women, whether they're a firefighter or a detention deputy or a deputy. It is going to be the singularly most important long-term that I see, notwithstanding the culture of the agency. I think the culture of the agency is our reputation is stellar statewide, stellar. And I tell people all the time, there's a reason that 2 governors have appointed us to be in leadership positions in, I sit on the Executive Institute for the state of Florida to determine and tell other agencies what is cutting-edge training and what is cutting-edge schooling.
Nationwide as well.
Nationwide as well, too. Nationwide as well. There's a reason that some people may realize that we were selected one of only about 12 people to testify before the Presidential Commission on Law Enforcement on what it takes to run a professional organization. Walton County. That's not me. That's the men and women of this organization. I think that matters. And so I think that's going to be, for us, we're training the next generation of leaders so that we have succession planning, and I think that's important for any organization. And so that's really kind of my main, you didn't ask me what my main goal was. My main goal is succession planning for the future. But yeah, it's good stuff. That's a great question.
Yeah. Okay. We have a couple, Michael Russ is asking if we're going to add more police chases to our YouTube channel. I will try my best. The different platforms are a lot to keep up with. I try to upload stuff to YouTube when I can. Todd Rourke is asking, help me understand how there's a massive break-in on 30A resulting in a party with more than 100 humans, a large numbers of pictures and videos, but no arrests.
I'll make that simple. No. This is easy. Actually, it's kind of understanding the law. So obviously, we identified 100+ people there easily. But the law pretty quickly states that you can't arrest those people because they're invited there. So that was, and if you go back and remember this, there was an invitation sent out like 2 weeks in advance to have a party at a place, which is obviously a little bit different, right? And so when you advertise a party, you cannot arrest every guest that comes there because you say they're breaking in. State does not allow that. I realize that would make some people happy. However, it would have been easier for us, but that's not the law. And the worst thing you can do is have a sheriff that abuses the law or the position in search of political favor. And we're just not going to do that for anybody. So, yeah, it was the whole thing's a little odd for sure. But, you know, they were lucky there wasn't a bunch of stuff stolen. There wasn't a bunch of damage done to that. But it is strange. But I have to tell you, we deal with parties all the time. And in that particular night, you may or may not remember, there was a multi-county shootout involving our deputies at the same time. So that unfortunately takes priority over a party. So.
Shannon wants me to remind everyone, going back to the Back to School Splash Bash, that there is a box for donations at the lobby at North Admin and one here at South Admin if anybody would like to donate. And we have 2 QR codes on the event page on our Facebook where you can donate, or we have an Amazon wish list for the event.
Oh yeah,
so
cool. Very cool. Very cool.
It's really a great event. And last year, Tony, you were there. You were running the foam cannon, and
nice.
There's so many.
Did you
kids
see that in your job description? Did you run
such
the foam?
a good time.
I'm going to run the foam cannon.
I requested it again this year.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Sheriff, we're caught up.
Awesome.
It is 7:20.
2 hours.
2 hours, almost 2 hours. Yep.
Yeah, 2 hours.
And is there anything
Are
else?
we the only people in the nation doing this live from a law enforcement measure?
I would guess, yeah. I mean, I have never seen another elected official in a law enforcement capacity taking questions on social media live consistently. I haven't seen that.
That's not all of Mike. We're just curious. If somebody asked me,
Yeah.
I said, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. So anyway, awesome. Thank you for joining us. We hope we got all your questions answered. If we didn't, send them back. Email us. We'll be happy. Some of you guys had a request, wanted to meet about some things. Try to email Deputy Lytle, and we will try and move forward. We'll be back in about 2 weeks. We'll go from there. Thank you, guys. Tony, thank you. Thank you, Corey. Appreciate you guys. And as always, be safe. And if there's some way we can better serve you, let us know.